Hello, my name is Heather Zins, and I'm a student at DSU, and I am here to talk to you about special education, how it all got started, and what families and students will be going through during the process of getting into special education. This video is designed for parents and students to better understand what goes into special education and IEPs. First, we're going to start talking about how special education came to be. In the 1800s, residential schools for students with disabilities began to emerge. The first one in America was founded by Thomas Hopkins Gallaudet in Hartford, Connecticut in 1817. Now, most of these early schools focused primarily on students who were deaf, blind, or mentally challenged. Gallaudet's school focused more on students who were deaf. Another early school was the Perkins School for the Blind. This was founded in Watertown, Massachusetts, and was the first school for the blind. It wasn't until the 20th century that communities began to realize the children with disabilities needed a voice and someone to create programs to assist them. One of these organizations was the Easter Seals. This was founded by Edgar Allan, who realized children with disabilities were hidden from public view. Today, there are more than 550 centers that provide services to families and communities. Another is the Joseph Kennedy Jr. Foundation. The foundation's main belief is that persons with intellectual disabilities have the ability to live, learn, work, recreate, and worship like everyone else, but may need assistance to do these things. They emphasize on informing families about resources available to them. Next is the Special Olympics, which is an athletic program for people with disabilities. It is the largest sports program in the world. Another organization is the ARC, which works for changing legislation and influencing Congress in the special education community. Autism Speaks is a more recent organization, and it is the largest nonprofit science and advocacy organization that focuses all resources on autism. The Gordon Hartman Foundation opened the first amusement park for children and adults with disabilities and their families, and this was called Morgan's Wonderland, which was named after Gordon's daughter, who has physical and cognitive disabilities. These organizations help families learn to live with disabilities and help support them throughout their lives. The legislation that led to special education today, the Vocational Rehabilitation Act of 1973, Section 504, is no otherwise qualified handicapped individual in the United States shall solely by reason of his handicap be excluded from the participation and denied benefits or be subjected to discrimination under any program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. This basically says that schools must provide free and appropriate education to all qualified students. This means that they have equal opportunity as every other student in school, and at the same cost as every other student, and they are provided with the resources needed to have a good education. The American with Disabilities Act, with the passing of this legislation, all places must have appropriate accommodations for people with disabilities. These accommodations include lowered counters, handrails, wheelchair accessible areas in every place. This also includes like having braille outside of doors so that the blind can see, and having interpreters and stuff like that if they're needed. The Education for All Handicapped Children Act of 1975. This is where all students will be provided with free and appropriate education. This means that the program must meet the child's needs in an environment that will benefit them the most, and the students will be placed in a least restrictive environment. This means that the student will be in a regular classroom as much as possible, but they can be taken out of the classroom if it will benefit them more for their education. The other legislations are the amendments of 1983 and the amendment of 1986, Infants and Toddlers with Disabilities. The amendments of 1983, these amendments increased assistance to deaf and blind students and expand services to children from birth to age 5. The amendments of 1986, Infants and Toddlers. This provides early intervention programs for infants and toddlers and their families with no cost to families. Next, we'll talk about the categories of disabilities. First is autism. Autism significantly affects verbal and nonverbal communication and social interaction. Deafness is hearing impairment so severe that the child can't process linguistic information. Deaf blindness, which causes is where they are deaf and blind, and this causes severe communication development and educational problems. Hearing impairment is different than deafness. It's not included under deafness. It's just the student has more trouble hearing than a normal ear can. Mental disabilities is a sub-average intellectual disabilities, otherwise known as cognitive disability. Multiple disabilities are when the child has 2 or more impairments together. Orthopedic impairment includes things like absence of a limb, cerebral palsy, and others that have to do with bones and muscles. Other health impairment is having limited strength or alertness due to a chronic health problem. Tourette's syndrome is a neurological disorder that includes repetitive, involuntary movements. Emotional disturbance is the student cannot build or maintain relationships, has inappropriate behaviors or feelings under normal circumstances, or has moods of depression. Specific learning disability is a disorder where a student cannot understand or use language. Speech and language impairment, this is where the student has a communication disorder such as stuttering or impaired articulation. Traumatic brain injury is an injury caused by an external physical force. Visual impairment, including blindness, includes partially sighted, low vision, and legally blind from a functional loss of vision. Pervasive development disorder is a delay in social, language, motor, or cognitive development. And ADHD is a child has problems paying attention, being very active, and acting before thinking. Your rights as a parent. As a parent, you can inspect and review all records of your student. The IDEA says that parents need to be involved in developing their child's program. All records relating to the child can be viewed by parents, including ones that any public agency maintains. Consent is required for any evaluations that the child needs. So if your child needs to have a test done to determine their IQ or something, you have to consent to that before the school can do it. The right to obtain an independent educational evaluation of their child. Consent from a parent is required for initial placement in special education. So if the school believes that your child is struggling, they have to ask you to evaluate them and put them in special education. Challenge and appeal. That is where a parent can challenge and appeal any decision related to identification, evaluation, or placement of the child in special education. Notification to public agencies. that is where you need to notify public agencies if you're planning to move your child to a private school at the public's expense. The assessment process. Evaluation must be done in a fair, unbiased way. So this means that the school needs to, if your child speaks in a different language at home, then they are required to provide that test in that language so your student can better understand. Consent is needed to give the assessments, and with the initial evaluations, parent consent needs to be given. Once again, there is a notice that the school has to send out to you as a parent or guardian that tells you they are going to give this test and when they're going to give it. There are multiple tests that they give to students to determine disabilities, and it's not just one test. They have to give multiple ones to have firm evidence. Student is tested in all areas of suspected disability, and it's determined by qualified professionals and parents. So you are involved throughout the whole process. The IEP process. The members of the IEP are the parents, of course, at least one regular special education teacher, at least one regular education teacher, one special education teacher, a representative from a local school or a local education agency. So this is a person who must be qualified to provide instruction to meet unique needs of students with disabilities, is knowledgeable about the curriculum, and knowledgeable about resources available. One person who can determine results and interpret results to the parents. Anyone who is knowledgeable about the students, and the student whenever appropriate. So the IEP should accomplish these things. Meetings should serve as a communication vehicle between parents and educators. The process should resolve differences between the parents and the school personnel concerning the student goals. It should show resources available to students throughout related services and public education and special education. A management tool to ensure the student receives the appropriate education. It should ensure that the school complies with the program and monitors the progress of the student, and it is an evaluation device used to determine progress. So the IEP is basically just a tool so that the school and you are both involved and know what is happening with your child during school and the goals that they are expected to meet throughout the school year. The IEP shows assessments the child has been given, states the student's disability and how it affects their achievement in the general education classroom, has annual measurable goals for the student to achieve over the course of the school year. It also lists supplementary aids for students, such as taking tests in a quieter room or extra time on tests, or if the student needs the test read to them. Those are things that are included. It also states how to use positive behavioral reinforcements to help with student behavior. I hope this video has been helpful for you to better understand how the IEP and special education affects you and your student. Hope you have a great day, and thanks for watching.